I'm Sunny Sky, and today our card is featuring the Bloom and Grow stamp set with alcohol markers and also the Perennial Essence paper and the delicate lace dies at the bottom. Here are the cardstock sizes that you need for today's card. We're using that Perennial Essence paper on the inside, the delicate lace dies, and the Bloom and Grow stamp set, and some Stampin' blends to color. Here's a couple versions of the card we're creating today. This one is the one I'm going to demonstrate for you, but if you don't have this lace die, if you don't want to add the rhinestones, you're worried about mailing with that, here's a flatter version you can do. This one I use the petals washi tape and a little strip of cardstock, and so I mirrored that on the inside with a little strip of the colored cardstock. And using the designer series paper on the inside, the colors just go really well, and we don't really need it on the front, but I think it mirrors it nicely. Similar colors, both floral images, and just gives you a little more interest on the inside of your card. Okay, I've stamped the greeting up at the top with our rich razzleberry, and we'll do the floral image in Memento ink. We're using Memento because it is a water-based ink, and when you're using alcohol markers, you don't want to blend an alcohol line art image in with your coloring. So starting with the water-based ink will make sure that you don't do that. Leaving a lot of space here below, because depending on which die we choose, we're going to need quite a bit of space down at the bottom. Hey guys, I've been cheerfully coloring away here on this image, and I wanted to show you some about this coloring. Rich razzleberry, light and dark. I generally use the wider end to color in, and I'm going to just use the lighter one on the outsides, any place where there's going to be more light. And on this I'm using the wider tip, and then I'm going to come back with the darker one and bring that out from the center and kind of go circular, but sometimes for flower petal you want to just kind of extend. And if you're working on, like, this petal is underneath the other flower, so it's going to kind of be dark on the edge there. So anything where the shadow is going to hit it, you're going to have a darker image. These little tiny ones, you might want to use the narrower tip for smaller spaces, just to give you a little more control to get back in there. It still colors really nicely. Okay, and then I'm going to come back in with the light and kind of overlap the light and the dark areas there. And that's what's going to give me that blending look, is when I come back through. And then if you want to get more variance in there, even this is the lighter one, but if I come back through, it's going to add more color and more depth. And I'm just adding to the center there. Now these back petals here are very dark. I want to add just a little bit of sunlight to them, and so this one is called the Color Lifter. And it's basically just going to move away some of the color that was there, make it a paler color. It also works really well when your color is fresh and hasn't dried yet. That's really when it works the strongest, but I'm adding a little bit of lifter there, and you can see that it's lightening up the edges of those petals. And then this is the lighter color of Night of Navy that I'm doing for the berries here. And let me put the lids back on my markers here and get these, yes, green ones. Oh, I want to do the narrower tip for this one because there are some smaller areas. I really prefer to color in with that wider tip. It's softer, like a brush tip, and this is more like a bullet point, I think is what I've seen it called. So it's firmer, more like a ballpoint pen, but it doesn't write like a ballpoint pen, but it's good for these tiny spots. But when I can, I use the other area there. Let me just add a little more color lifter to the edges of a couple of petals here, just to add a little more dimension in these. All right. And so now we are ready for our decorative edge. Now this piece, we kind of did our design up near the top, so we have plenty of room. And then when we come along, this edge is one that's going to go down this way. And so what I'm going to do is line up my cardstock along these grid lines so I know that it's straight, and then I'm going to line up the die along the grid lines. And I do have that ribbon I'm going to add, so I'm going to have this come down near the bottom of the cardstock because I have, in fact, let me pull over this other spot here, this mint macaron, and you can, and if you lay them over top of each other, and again I'm lining up with grid lines, and see where they're going to be, you can see how much extra you're going to have showing down there. I don't want to pull this up really high because then I'd have a lot of green down near the bottom, so I want it to be kind of near the bottom. And then I have my delicate ribbon that I'm going to attach. So I'm kind of lining it up here, but then I'm going to look at where these are, make sure that they're lined up on the grid lines there so I know that it's parallel. And I'm going to add a couple pieces of washi tape just to hold this die in place. And the washi tape is not super sticky, so it'll be fine when I lift it up off that. And then the other thing I'm going to do is, because this is a delicate die, I'm going to use my delicate detail die mat on my embossing, on my Big Shot. And also another item you can do is flip it over so that the cutting edge is up, and I've got it taped down so I know it's not going to wiggle around as I flip it over. So because I was using my detailed base plate, I did not flip this upside down, but I am going to flip it upside down now to see it. And you just want to take a look at it after you've embossed it, anything detailed. Make sure it looks like it's cut all the way through. And then I'm just going to use my die brush and get all the little detailed pieces out of here. Let me carefully peel this off. Now, using this die, because it takes a little while to get all the pieces out, I probably wouldn't make 100 of the same card at once with this, but if I was making 4 or 5, maybe I had Mother's Day cards to create or a wedding card, then these border dies are really lovely to add to a card. Okay, I almost got them all out there. Let me just grab my take your pick tool. The last few stragglers, just trying to be difficult. And when I lined this up, I don't think I mentioned, but I did try and make sure that the die was evenly to the left and the right, and I accomplished that pretty well. I like my design to end up the same on both sides. Okay, so now we've got this very delicate polka dot tulle ribbon, and I'm just going to wrap it around this card front here. It's wide, it's not super narrow, but because it is see-through and has little polka dots, it's very dainty, and so you can use a wider ribbon without it overshadowing your card details and the other parts of your card. Right, there we go. All right, and then we just have to layer this on here. Layer it on our full card. And then we did have an extra piece of Whisper White. Did you notice that when we had the cardstock sizes? So you just glue, and you can use it. This is a bigger border here, but it's easier to have just 2 of the same size pieces of white, so you don't have to figure out which one is which. Border there, and then also your decorative paper on the inside. So I'll just glue those down, and this card will be ready to go to someone special. So let me bring back in again those other 2 versions. And this one, oh, and I forgot to add these little doohickeys here, these gold faceted gems. Now, if you're going to mail this card, you may want to use the smaller size just because they're not quite as deep as the others. Or add a little, a lot of times I'll just put this in an envelope, and I'll just put, if I put this in an envelope, I'll just put a piece of cardstock over the top of it to kind of protect what's going on there. All right, forgive me while I just look a little messy here. And let's just add a couple more of these faceted gems the two on either side. And you know what I noticed? I forgot to color in that final flower there. I think I was demonstrating this one for my stamp club and left that one uncolored. I left a couple uncolored, showed them how to color one, and didn't go back in and color the last one. So anyway, there's a couple versions with a couple of the different bases. There, if I just set that right there, you can see them right next to each other. So that's the project for today. I'm glad you joined me. If you enjoyed this project, give me a thumbs up and go have some fun crafting today. Hey, don't mind me. I'm just finishing off this last bit of coloring on my other card here. Oh, and I made a mistake. Use my color lifter, push that right back into the lines. That's so handy. Hey, I wanted to point something out to you. You guys see this one that I just finished coloring? It's a little darker than this one over here and the rest of this card because this hasn't dried yet. So your color does change a little bit as your card dries, as your ink dries. So just something to note. If you think it's not turning out the color you think it's supposed to be, just wait a few minutes and it will.